Okay, so you ready? All right, so welcome to episode 5 of Rolling with Simon. For you guys that have been following, I'm very grateful for everybody to join and continuing to just to see the rest of the people that have been in my life that have made somewhat of an impact. And today we have Eric, aka BJJ Razor. Because his moves are on the mats are like very sharp, cut you with the gi. But yeah, Eric, you are a federal agent, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. A Fed, right? And then you also have an extensive background in martial arts. I remember you told me you trained like Taekwondo.
I did for a long time.
Yeah, and you got like the weapon certification from your job, right?
Yeah.
And you also, obviously you're pretty proficient with a firearm.
So, I think so.
Well, I hope so, right?
Hope so.
But yeah, thank you for joining me on episode 5. I know I've been I've been telling people like, oh, I'm gonna get Jeff for episode this, but then I was supposed to have you as a later episode, but whatever. I'm just glad you're here. Yeah. So congratulations. Also, you got your black belt pretty recently as well.
September.
Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And before we even begin, you want to share what your age? Like?
Yeah, I'm going to be 50 in two whole weeks.
Incredible.
I'll be 50.
Yeah, I think that's something, just looking at the older guys at the gym, and you guys are just, all of you, still animals. Just the Saturday you tapped me with a nice gi choke, and I was like, crap, man, this guy's, could be my dad, but you still got it. So kudos to you. So I guess the first question I want to get into is about your law enforcement background.
Mm-hmm.
What got you interested in it? Like, what was it, like a movie? What inspired you to, get into law enforcement?
Yeah. So when I was growing up as a kid, I think I had an interest in the law. When I was in high school, I grew up in New York City. I didn't take any social studies classes. I was in this legal studies program. So I didn't take any social studies till the end of my senior year in high school. I did this legal studies program where we did like mock trials, and it was mostly like, sort of what you would do if you were a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I didn't really do any social studies till my last semester senior year, and they basically crammed 3 years of social studies into my last semester because we had to take, in New York, I had to take something called the Regents exam. So I take the social studies Regents my senior year. So I was always interested in the law. And so as an undergrad, I was a political science and government major. And I took the LSATs and I took the GREs.
Oh, you took the LSAT?
I took the LSATs.
Oh, you did?
And I took the GREs because I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to graduate school or law school.
Oh, so you could have been a lawyer right now.
Well, thankfully, I didn't go that way because it just wouldn't have been for me, really. I think it would have just been one of those things. But the more I thought about it, the more I was always interested in law enforcement. I was always interested in policing. As a kid, I remember just thinking about, always sort of enamored by the police.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid always going up to the cops in the neighborhood. I would see them in the park, in the street, or whatever. And I would never ask the questions that normal kids would ask, which are always, you ever use your gun? You ever shoot anybody? You ever arrest anybody? I would always ask the cops, like, what's it like being a cop? Like, what's your day like? I was always, interested in that, even as a little kid. So, I applied to graduate school, I applied to law school, and the more that I thought about it, the more that going to law school just wasn't something that I really had an interest in doing.
Yeah.
So I went to graduate school for sociology and criminal justice, really, and that was really when I started to search for jobs.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't. I didn't really start looking like. A lot of kids are out there taking tests when they're 19, 18, and it's what they want to do. I really didn't know. So I didn't really start that search until probably my first year of graduate school is when I started to really look at taking tests and applying for different jobs that I would see come around.
Yeah. So it wasn't a movie that inspired it?
No.
It was purely environmental?
Yeah, it was absolutely environmental. It was just as a kid growing up in New York and playing in the park and seeing the cops walk through the park. And, my parents had some friends who were in the NYPD growing up. I was around a few cops here and there. Nothing major.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I'm from a family of law enforcement people or anything like that. It was really just, environmental.
Yeah. I know. So just the interesting tidbit. One of the guys who's a dentist at our gym, Andy, you guys went to the same, what?
No, junior high school.
Junior high school.
For 2 years.
Yeah, that's insane. So,
yeah, for 2 years, 7th and 8th grade.
So
we
you guys
didn't know each other. No.
And then would be at the same jiu-jitsu school.
Yeah.
You know, X amount of years later.
Yeah, we were having a conversation one day, and we're the same age. I'm a month older than him. His birthday's in July or August. And I said to him, you know, when you were growing up, like, where'd you live? And he said, when I first came here, I lived in the Bronx. And I said, well, I grew up in the Bronx. Where? And I think he said he was 12 when he came, you know, over. And I said, where in the Bronx did you grow up? And so I grew up in Riverdale. You know, it's just a section of the Bronx. Well, I grew up in Riverdale. Now we're the same age. And I said, well, where'd you go to school? And he said, well, I was in 7th and 8th grade. I was in junior high school 141. And I said, well, that's where I was. So we weren't, I don't remember him. I certainly didn't know him or remember knowing him because he was only there for 2 years. So he didn't go to elementary school with me, and he certainly didn't go to high school. He moved after, I think, 8th grade. He said he moved. So I didn't, it was only that 2-year period. But yeah, we lived in the same neighborhood, basically. We went to the same school. World. And yeah, and then, you know, when we were training one day, we just started talking and realized that we basically grew up probably, you know, a couple blocks from each other.
Yeah, and now you guys are trying to choke each other out.
Yeah.
Was your school predominantly like a certain, you know, demographically, like?
So my elementary school and my junior high school were predominantly white, middle class.
Okay.
My high school was inordinately diverse.
Okay.
So my high school was on the border of the Bronx and Manhattan. There were about 5,000 students. I went to John F. Kennedy High School, and there were 5,000 students, maybe a little bit more than that, and it was incredibly diverse. White was almost a minority just because of the pool of kids from where they came from. That diversity wasn't really in elementary school and junior high school, but it was certainly there in high school. There was, just because they were pulling kids in from such a diverse area of just where the Bronx and Manhattan met.
Yeah. So tell me about your, I guess your position. I know you tried to explain it to me. I couldn't understand it really well.
So it's a little confusing. So I am a federal agent, and so the agency I work for, I'm a special agent within an agency called the Office of Inspector General, and the broader agency is the Department of Health and Human Services. So I do all healthcare fraud. Health and Human Services is the agency that oversees things like Medicare and Medicaid and stuff like that. There are about 60 or 70 federal law enforcement agencies in the government, and most of them have special agents or criminal investigators. So everybody who's a special agent or a criminal investigator has the same job title, just because that's the way the federal government works. So everybody who's in the job title of special agent or criminal investigator all has basically the same training, the same retirement, the same pension. So people that work for the DEA or the ATF or the Secret Service or the FBI, or any one of the OIGs, Office of Inspector General, the job is the same title and essentially the same job description. It's just what your focus is. The training is essentially the same. The FBI and the DEA go to Quantico. Everybody else goes to a place called the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center.
Where did you go?
Brunswick, Georgia. I went to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. So I was in a class with agents from my agency, Health and Human Services. Social Security has an OIG. I was with people from Secret Service, from what used to be called Customs. So every cabinet level position, little basic civics, right? So the president has a cabinet. Every cabinet level position that's there has an Office of Inspector General, and the job is to investigate matters involving fraud, waste, or abuse within that program. So, the president has a cabinet. There's HUD, right? So Housing and Urban Development. There's an OIG for them. Department of Commerce, Department of Treasury, Department of State. All of the agencies that you always hear about. There's an OIG, right? And then our director is the Inspector General.
Got it.
And so our Inspector General basically, dictates how we, will run our operations. We have essentially the same training as anybody who goes through any other law enforcement training in the federal government. So it's, it's the same sort of block of instruction. And then it's just a matter of what your focus is. So my job is a little diverse. We do healthcare fraud, but healthcare fraud is very diverse. So it could be everything from a bribery case to a doctor on the corner performing tests that a patient doesn't need, to them billing for things that they don't do, and
or selling drug like prescription drugs.
So that's our big thing right now. Is the opioid issue is the big thing, and one of our main focuses is really on cases involving doctors who are essentially drug dealers with a prescription pad.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
So you have a doctor who has you come to his office and he bills insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance for an office visit that you really didn't need, because it's really just for him to be able to justify writing a prescription. So the doctor writes a prescription for, a narcotic drug that you don't need. He gets to bill insurance for that. He then sends you to an unscrupulous pharmacy who knows this doctor's sending a lot of prescriptions over for this drug. The pharmacy bills insurance for that drug, and the patient has now taken this drug and is either using it themselves or selling it or trading it or doing whatever. And unfortunately, some of those people are overdosing and dying. So I'm working on a couple of cases right now where we have some doctors who are writing prescriptions for people who are overdosing and dying.
Yeah.
I've got a couple that I'm working on. Those are cases I'm working with the DEA. We work with them sometimes by ourselves. We just work with them. Our big thing is if there is a hook into insurance somehow.
Oh, I see.
So
okay.
like typically in a bribery case, you have a doctor who's taking bribes from, say, an MRI center or an X-ray facility, where every time the doctor refers a patient, they get $50. So it's a bribery case, and if there's insurance involved, it's against the federal law to do that. Everything from those kinds of cases up through the big thing right now are drug diversion.
What about steroids? Is that
no? Because typically insurance isn't paying for that. It's typically a cash business, so we don't really get involved in that. That's something the DEA.
That's the DEA. Okay.
DEA would probably do that on its own.
So doctors wouldn't prescribe maybe people that are athletes or
maybe like an HGH type situation.
Typically that's not really a big issue.
It's not really for us, because we're really focused on what is Medicare paying for, what's Medicaid paying for, or what should they not be paying for. We don't really get into the cash deals and that kind of stuff. We're really more focused on what's the impact to the government payers. So what are your tax dollars being spent on, and are they being spent appropriately? Really. But the diversity is pretty good, because we work a lot. So we're working on these drug cases, we work these bribery cases. We work some cases that involve some grants and some contract fraud. So, hospitals get a lot of grant money, UMDNJ in Newark, Rutgers, they get a lot of grant money for their medical programs, and are they using that money appropriately? So I had a case a long time ago. There was a guy who was a professor at John Jay, College of Criminal Justice. He was a sociology guy. And he had this grant from HHS to do studies on heroin. But he was using the money to buy heroin. So he wasn't actually using the money for the study. He was actually buying. He was a user himself, and he was buying a variety of different things not relating to the grant. So we do a lot of that. There's a secretary for the agency, and the secretary has a permanent security detail, but when the secretary travels into our area, we supplement. So we have protective details where the secretary comes in, and a couple of agents get assigned to supplement the existing agents, and we have to do sort of like a protective thing.
Wow.
Not dissimilar from what the Secret Service does. So we've got some training on, sort of what they call protective operations. You're driving the secretary around and dignitaries and things of that nature. So like last summer, I had to take the former secretary, was a guy named Tom Price. He was up for a meeting with Trump at Trump National in Bedminster.
Oh, so I think you talked about that.
Yeah, so I got up
on
there.
TV or something?
I was there at Kellyanne Conway on TV in the corner. But so sometimes you get to go to some pretty interesting things. Depending upon what the secretary is doing. I've been to when Jon Stewart was doing the Daily Show. I went to the Jon Stewart show a couple times, like to the back. Steve Colbert, when he had his show, I met Steve Colbert and Jon Stewart.
Oh, that's cool.
I've been to all the news outlets, CNN in New York, MSNBC, Fox News. I've gotten to go to all those and like to the studio. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a little bit of diversity in doing it, but generally everybody sort of relates me back to FBI Eric because it's so hard to sometimes explain.
Think about
that it's sometimes just easier to go something like that.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of niche space. A lot of people don't know who HHS is, Health and Human Services.
Yep, exactly.
They just they know what Medicare is or Medicaid, but people don't really know what it is. So most of the time when people are like FBI, I'm like, okay, whatever. Just let it go.
I was thinking about because Sung, who I plan on interviewing as well. Sung is a oncology doctor, and he is out of Robert Wood Johnson.
Robert Wood,
right?
yeah, New Brunswick.
I was thinking as you were speaking, I was like, man, what if there was like a Breaking Bad situation where Sung training with Sung?
I've actually run into Sung. I was at University Hospital in Newark for something.
Oh, really?
And I was walking in, and he was walking out, and we stopped to talk. And it's one of those things where when you run into someone that you see in an environment outside of your normal environment, there's always that like pause for a second, like. You know them, but you don't know them, but you know them, right? You sort of look at them, and I know Sung a long time, so it was just a odd thing because he sees me walking into the hospital, he's walking out of the hospital, and he stopped for a minute, like, I expect to see Sung, he wouldn't expect to see me, but I was there to interview a witness, so it's kind of interesting.
It's like Breaking Bad right there.
Interesting
he's
thing.
Like selling, narcotics.
It's
You're investigating him.
Yep.
But oh man, I had a slight kind of like understanding that you weren't exactly a FBI agent, but something within that realm. So it's really nice to have it cleared up.
Sure.
So I guess for people that are interested in pursuing a career like this, you talked about the training, right? You said you got the same training as if you somebody went to Quantico.
Sure.
Can you explain the training, like what you went through, how long it was? Was it grueling? Was it something that you should prepare for, like things like that?
So the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center is this huge campus, and it's a lot like a college campus. There's dorms, everybody gets their own room, you get your own bathroom. It's a Monday through Friday situation, 7:30 to 4:30 or 5:30. It's an 8-hour day. The academy is very large, and there are multiple classes going on for different things. So the federal government has a lot of police departments, believe it or not. So the VA has their own police department. The Department of Defense has their own police department. All the federal buildings are policed by an organization called the Federal Protective Services. So there's a lot of police academies going on where they're in a full dress uniform, and they're it's more what you would expect when you think about a police academy. The Border Patrol used to be at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. They've since moved. But there's a lot of academies going on that are basic academies and advanced. But when you go to criminal investigator school, to not make it sound arrogant, you're sort of the top of the food chain. Criminal investigators are sort of on the higher end of the pay scale. On the training scale, things of that sort. So a typical academy now, the criminal investigator training program is about 12 or 14 weeks. You live there. All your meals are provided. It really is like a college campus.
Yeah, okay.
You get the added benefit of having a laundry service for your linens. So every morning you leave your room, you come back, there's fresh linens and towels.
Wow.
But you have to do your own clothes and all that stuff. But it's a residential academy. You wear BDUs and a polo shirt during your day. So you're wearing like a pair of khaki pants, cargo pants, polo shirt, sneakers or boots or whatever. And you're wearing your gear. You're wearing a holster with a red gun and handcuffs and stuff because they want you to start getting used to carrying the firearm and protecting it and things of that sort. And a typical day usually would consist of about half a day, broken up, but half a day of classroom and half a day of practical instruction. So you're spending usually no more than 2 hours at a time in a classroom. Blocks of training are 2 hours. So like you might start your day at 7:30 and have a 2-hour block of instruction on, say, the Fourth Amendment search and seizure or Fifth Amendment regarding advice of rights and things of that sort. Then your class is broken up. It's a 48 student class, and they'll break you up into 2 groups of 24. And so there'll be an A group and a B group. And so the A group might go to firearms and the B group might go to defensive tactics.
Oh, interesting.
Firearms defensive tactics were typically every day. through the academy. You're usually getting 2 hours of firearms training a
Wow.
day, 3 to 5 days a week in the beginning. Later on, it'll taper off. And then you're getting defensive tactics, solid 2 days, 2 hours at a time. And defensive tactics spans a wide variety of things.
Yeah.
It's everything from handcuffing procedures to frisk, that kind of stuff,
Interesting.
to
Okay.
actual defensive tactics, use of the baton, use of the pepper spray.
And you're certified, right? In that.
So I haven't been an instructor in a few years, but for most of my time at the agency, I was a baton, OC, and defensive tactics instructor, handcuffing, and that stuff. It's since now become a little bit, they now call it control tactics, because it spans a continuum, that it's not just about the intermediate weapons, the striking and the OC and things of that. So there's also a very major focus now for ground fighting and ground defense.
Yeah.
One of the main guys at the academy that teaches a lot of that stuff is a guy named Scott Devine, who's a 3rd degree Helson black belt. He's got a school off campus in town. When anybody who's training in jiu-jitsu is down at FLETC, they call it, people go to his school. He's probably one of the nicest human beings on the planet.
Yeah.
He charges almost nothing to his students.
Wow.
He does it as a side thing. When I was a purple belt going down there, he wouldn't even take money from me.
Wow.
He felt like, purple belt and above, your job is to help other people get better.
That's awesome.
But he basically sets the curriculum for a lot of that training. There's a very hard focus on ground defense and ground fighting when you're down there. So you're getting, a typical day will have a mix of the classroom with practical stuff, everything from firearms, defensive tactics training, search warrant, execution, like how to actually go into a building, how to do interviews. Okay. There's a huge block of instruction on interviewing people where you'll come in and for the day they'll bring role players in from the town, and you don't wear a uniform, you wear a suit, you have to bring a suit, and you're working on a mock case. So they'll set you up where where you'll spend a day, doing that. They have a mock town, and you'll bring a car into town as if you're going to knock on someone's door, interview someone in a business setting or an office setting or a residential setting.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very comprehensive. And then they sprinkle in a couple days a week. There's PT, 2-hour block. There's usually some time in the gym, the weight room, and then there'll be a run. When you start the academy, you do something called the physical efficiency battery. And at the end you do it. So there's a PT test in the beginning. There's a PT test at the end. Okay. That test is a 1.5-mile run, a 300-meter run, push-ups, unlimited, and no time limit, and then maximum sit-ups in a minute. And then they score you, and then you do it at the end, and you...
Is there a minimum, and you...
It's based on age. So it's based on age, and it's based upon agency requirement, whether or not it's a participation or a fail. Like, so there's set numbers, what have you. And then at graduation, so you can get, there's an academic honors. So if you've got a 95 or above cumulative average on all of the exams, which is hard to get, you can get an honor. You can graduate with academic honors. Mm-hmm. You can graduate with firearms honors based upon your scores, and you can graduate with like a PT honors for score on your PT tests. Mm-hmm. So you can get 1, 2, or all 3. Then they have like a separate award if you get all 3. Usually, there's 1 or 2 people that usually will get all 3.
All 3. Wow.
Yeah, the academic honors is the hardest, only because there are 5 or 6 exams, and you'll have people that will be in that 95% range, and then the last exam is like the hardest cumulative exam, and you get a lot of people drop off. So, so it's 12 weeks, Monday through Friday. You get weekends off. But most of the time you're spending your weekends studying, because if you fail the exams, you're out. So you're spending a lot of time studying for the exams, and there's projects that you have to do. So one of the projects might be preparing a search warrant affidavit on a mock case that you're working. So you're spending a lot of time doing that. On the weekends, just getting that. Laundry you got to do on your own. And just, getting ready for the coming week. And it becomes a little bit of a hamster on a wheel, because the first couple of weeks are new and interesting and exciting, but week 9 and 10 with the same people, and you're living there. When I went, I didn't bring a car. A lot of people drive down there. I went to a new employee orientation a couple of weeks before, so I'd met a bunch of people who were driving down and said, don't bring a car. I regret that because I was sort of at someone else's disposal. Right?
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a problem. But it was great. It was a great experience. You learn a lot about the job, as in just being a criminal investigator. Yeah. And then with most agencies, including ours, when you're done, you go to an add-on. So everybody is there learning the same stuff for that block of time, but then I don't know anything about how to do a fraud case or a healthcare fraud case. Mm. So you get done with that, and then they send you off to like we call it special agent basic training. It used to be 2 or 3 weeks. It's now 5 or 6 weeks because it's much more comprehensive now. And in part, we take people from other agencies as well. So they want to get everybody on the same level playing field. So that's a 5-week block of instruction that mirrors the training regimen of the FLETC training, a little bit of classroom, a little bit of practical. Yeah. I teach at that academy. It's in cool. We do it it's in Maryland, outside of Baltimore. So I go and do blocks of instruction on fraud related stuff. Yeah. Because I'm not a defensive tactics instructor anymore. I don't do that block of instruction that people do that.
Got it. So anybody coming into that whole 3-month or 12-week course, is there anything they could do to prepare for that? Maybe get their PT numbers higher. Yeah. Maybe join a gun club, or range or whatever, and practice. Is there anything that they can do to kind of get there? Or?
So I get the basic is that if you're not in shape, they're going to get you in shape, but you don't want to be the guy at the back at the bottom, and you want to be the guy at the front. You want to be that guy in the middle, right? You want to be the guy in the middle. So I wasn't really a runner. I'm really not a runner even now. I hate when I do it. I just do it. You just do it to do it. But I definitely think that if you're going into one of these academies, and particularly local law enforcement, police academy, where they're doing a lot more PT, you got to get it going so that I always would say you don't want to fail for something that you had absolute control of ensuring that you didn't fail, right? You can study as hard as you study, and you're going to do as well as you can try to do, but the one thing that you absolutely can try to preface before you get there is doing some PT. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people are not shooters. I never shot a gun before I went to the academy. No, I didn't start off in this job. I started off right at graduate school as a corrections officer at a federal penitentiary. You actually. So I got out of graduate school, and the first job I was able to get was working at the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I packed up and I moved into the middle of central Pennsylvania, and I worked at a federal penitentiary.
I never knew
as a corrections officer at what at the time was the highest security level prison.
What was it? Prison?
It was the U.S. Penitentiary in Allenwood, Pennsylvania. Okay. It was near Williamsport, where the Little League World Series is. That was claimed the fame. But I packed up, after graduate school. That was who hired me first. I tested in 1 million places. I was waiting to hear about 1 million jobs. Mm-hmm. And so I went out there because that job came first, and I at least wanted to get my foot in the door and say, well, if this doesn't work out, I at least tried. Yeah, yeah. But I had never shot a gun ever in my life prior to that academy. And that academy was only 3 weeks. That's a quick academy. And then there's some on-the-job training, but I'd never shot a gun before. Wow. And in that 3 weeks, I learned how to shoot a revolver, assault rifle, and a shotgun, all in those 3 weeks. I stayed there 15 months, and then I got hired by Federal Probation and Parole, and I worked in Brooklyn, New York. I really wanted to get back home. Okay. So I was a Federal Probation and Parole officer for 2 years. I worked mostly in Brownsville and East New York, and I did investigations. I did investigations on behalf of the court, the judges, for sentencing of people that were convicted of federal offenses. Yeah. So I would do background investigations, and I would help with some of the probation officers that were doing supervision of offenders. I would go out and help them with stuff. So I got a little bit more firearms training there. But I didn't really get a lot until I went to the academy here. Yeah. So, there's pluses and minuses to being able to shoot a little bit or having familiarity with guns before you go. The plus is that you're more comfortable. The minus is that you might have bad habits. The one thing that anybody who's an instructor will try to tell you is people bring their bad habits, and it's worse to try to fix a bad habit than to try to start with someone that's new. And I know we've talked about like going to the range, and when I go to the range and I take people who don't shoot or haven't shot in a while or aren't good shooters, I try to just give them, look, this is how I learned, and this has worked out for me for, I've been with HHS for 22 years. This is how I learned how to shoot. These are the people that I've spoken to, and, this is what works, and this is what the, sort of the shooting flavor of the day is on how to shoot.
Yeah.
And I just think that if you're going to do that before you get into one of these jobs, that you should make sure that you're not trying to wing it. I don't know if joining a gun club, but, I say to people, it doesn't hurt to take a lesson for an hour. Pay somebody the money if you don't know anybody who's willing to spend the time with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's worth spending the money on a lesson to have someone try to either get you comfortable, because sometimes that's really all you need, right? Mm-hmm. Most people aren't comfortable with standing there and having something go bang very loud in their hand. So sometimes it's just a matter of just having that 1 hour to feel a little bit more comfortable. In other cases, it's I want to just be a little bit more proficient, even though I already know how to shoot a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that go out, buy a gun, never shot one before. They're buying the wrong gun, right? People are doing that. I mean, there's a lot of guys that I know who go, they buy a gun and then they're unhappy with it because they don't know. Yeah. They didn't try it before they bought it. They didn't, they bought it because there's some Yelp rating that says it's a 5-star rating.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a plus and a minus to it. So the plus is if you've never shot a gun, it's worth doing it so that you really don't have that fear, that the trepidations that you have, you feel more comfortable. But the minus is if you're with a bunch of people who aren't good at least instructing how to shoot properly, you're coming with bad habits that have to be corrected, and you're really starting behind the curve. Yeah,
which I need to get together with you. For the viewers, both Eric and I are part of the Union Hill Gun Club, which I'm wearing the shirt. But yeah, shout out to Union Hill. For me, I wanted to get very proficient with firearms, and I know exactly what you're talking about. There's a lot of people that don't know how to shoot.
Right.
That even our members over there, and we're getting emails now where it's like, stop shooting the lights,
right.
Stop shooting, this and that, and
it's an interesting situation. So I was at a range about 6 months ago, not our range, a different one, and there was a guy in the booth next to me, and it was pretty busy, and he had a very nice gun, and he had no conception. He understood the point and shoot aspect, but he had no conception of how to deal with malfunctions or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And he was having some malfunctions, and he kept putting his gun down, coming over, tapping me on the shoulder, and asking me if I could help him. And he just had no conception of how to fix his problems. And that's an important piece, right? Forget the fact that he's just a hobbyist, hobby shooter, right? Which is what anybody in a range, unless because even law enforcement, you're there as a hobby. You're not there.
Yeah. Unless you're shooting competition or
correct,
something.
But it's generally, but even then, it's hobby, right?
Hobby.
When I have to shoot for work and I have to qualify for work, it's very different than when I go to the range.
Yes.
When I'm qualifying for work, it's time. The targets are moving. It's out of the holster. It's in the holster. There's a whole series of the magazine out and things like that. Yeah. When you're shooting as a hobbyist, it's at your own time, and if you have a malfunction, it's not the end of the world, but you should at least understand
what's wrong.
And there are a lot of people who I just don't think have that.
I think
conception. So taking a lesson will help you at the minimum have that level of comfort that if you feel like, oh my goodness, what just happened? You at least have that level of comfort to know I should put this down.
Yeah, let me tap his shoulder.
Let me put this down, step out of my booth, and wave to someone who might be able to come over and give me a hand.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think for me, the number one aspect of it all is safety. Is just having a general understanding of safety. You see, we're even getting emails where guys are, opening their guns at the stall, and not in their stall, outside of the stall, and bringing it over.
Sure.
Just a lot of bad habits, right?
Terrible.
And for me, I don't want to be that guy. Like I want to be the guy that's doing the right thing.
Sure. I make it a habit when I go to that range. when I walk into our range, I make it a habit of telling the range safety guy at the desk, if there's one sitting at the desk, or if there's a guy walking around, I make it a habit to let him know that I'm a concealed carrier, and that I have a gun on my hip, and that you're going to see. I don't ask. I never asked if I can do the rapid fire, draw from the holster. I just want to go and have like an hour of free thinking. I just want to enjoy the time that I'm there. But the point is that I'm going to take that gun from the holster to put it down. And I always want to let them know that, because I don't want them to, I just don't want to run into the problem before, I'm going to spearhead that problem before it happens. So I'm pretty cognizant when I walk in to let the guy at the desk know, the girl at the desk know, hey, I'm a concealed carrier. And I've suggested to them that they get a sticker or something for the ID card so you can see it. Another range that I've been to a bunch of times, they have, it's an hourly rate range. They know I'm concealed carrier, and they actually put on the ticket when you walk in. There's a green sticker. It says concealed. You walk in, you give it to the range safety officer. They put it up in the port. They know, and they're fine with it. But yeah, the safety is the most important thing. So getting back to your question, the hour or going with someone who is proficient with the gun to understand when this doesn't work, this is how we're going to fix it. Even if it doesn't work, this is how we're going to fix it, is setting it down and raising a hand and finding someone to help you.
Absolutely.
That's way better than the guy who tries to monkey around with it when because it's really just an accident waiting to happen.
Absolutely,
it really is.
100%. Okay, so just moving on. I know, actually, it's funny. Personally, when I graduated high school, there was a period where I was having a tough time finding a job. I actually graduated in 2009, which is when the crazy recession happened. So they were basically abusing the fact that, people needed jobs. And it was like, every engineering firm I found was like, okay, you need to get here by 5 a.m. and you're working till 6 p.m. And then you're getting home, and then you're working 6 days a week and maybe some Sundays, once or twice a month. And this is your salary. It's like this is all that's out there during that time. Yeah.
And you're looking at your salary and you're figuring out what your economist, like the effective rate.
Exactly.
You're looking at your effective rate and you're saying, I might as well just work at a I might as well work fast food. I might as well work I might as well work at retail or something. Right. Because your effective rate is so low. Right.
Yep. So there was a job, what are they called? The job fairs or something at Rutgers. And I went, and they had these 2 FBI agents, scouting for positions. And I was talking to the lady, and I really had no concept. Like, the concept that I had of the FBI was like, CIA or whatever, any type of those things. You grow up as a kid, you watch movies, and you're like, whoa, that's cool. But you have no idea the day-to-day. Those TV shows can't give you what is really going on.
Right.
All you know is, I get to carry a gun, and this is like a pretty cool type of thing,
Yeah.
So I began talking to the lady, and even her, she didn't give me a good, understanding of how do I even begin this kind of, in a sense, a journey, like to join the FBI. Like, all she wanted was my number, and then I'm like, well, what else, what happens from there? You're just going to take me, so for people out there, that want to know, like, if they are seriously interested in becoming a federal agent, how do they even go about it? Like, how do they even put their toe into it?
So I'm familiar with that job fair because we actually go. And they have one now for just the criminal justice department in New Brunswick. So I go to that, and there's an internship class that I teach a class at every semester. I go and I do a lecture, and I talk a little bit about what we as an agency do. When I talk about, if you didn't know who we were, but also if you didn't know who the OIGs were generally, there's 70 of them, and there's 70 new places to apply for a job.
Wow.
But, when I applied, when I was looking, it wasn't, I got hired at my first job at the Bureau of Prisons in December of 1993, and you had to go to a library, you had to get this newspaper and that would publish jobs. Now you can go up, there's a website called usajobs.gov. You can go up on that job board, you can sign up for the alerts, you can post your resume there, and when a job posts, you can send your stuff out. Sometimes jobs are only posted for a week, sometimes they're posted for 2 weeks. It depends. If they're looking for a large hiring, some agencies will put up a posting where they'll say, this job is going to be open for 30 days or the first 15,000 applicants.
Wow.
So it really is usajobs.gov, and then looking to see what are the different categories of jobs out there, and then figuring out where you fit in with that.
How could you stand out from the crowd? Is there any way you can personally?
So there's obviously a veteran's preference in a lot of jobs. There's veterans get, as they should in a lot of cases, veterans get a lot of preference in certain job situations.
What about having a specific degree?
So it depends on the agency that you're looking to apply for. So for most of the OIGs, it's a college degree. The FBI is even, if you don't have a law degree or one of their specialty degrees, you have to have 3 years of full-time work experience, and then you can apply. As an agent. Yeah, so every agency has its own sort of requirements as to what they're looking for. So you really need to understand what those requirements are, and then the more education you have, the greater your chances are of getting a higher entry position. So I have a master's, and unfortunately, the position that I applied for at the time, it was for an entry-level position, and they weren't filling it at higher grades, but. Agencies will come up with a posting where they'll hire you at higher grades depending upon whether or not you have a master's degree or a PhD or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people know. I only knew about the pay grades until I actually looked into it. Right. I think a lot of people think, for every job out there, they just here's the salary, right? This is what we're offering you. But with government jobs, it's completely different.
Yeah, it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So a job gets posted, a vacancy announcement gets put out for a job. So let's say we're hiring somebody in our office here in New Jersey. They'll say it's an entry-level position. Yeah. It's at the grade 7, which is entry-level.
E7, right?
GS7
GS7,
general.
okay.
Yeah, so they'll say that we're hiring this position at the GS7 level. Here's the requirements for that position. Sometimes there'll be an announcement where there'll be one position open, and it'll be open at the GS7 level, 9, 11, 12, 13.
And each one of those are specific...
different set of requirements.
Or salary-wise.
There's also a salary. As you go up in grade, you go up in pay.
Yeah.
But
one G7 couldn't make more than the other G7.
So the only way that normally happens is if you and I were both going in as GS7s and I was coming from another agency and you were coming in off the street, typically they'll come in as close as they can in steps to match your salary.
Oh,
so when I was
see.
So as an example, when I was a probation officer, I was at the grade 12. When I came over to the OIG, I went down to a grade 7. But they gave me the maximum number of steps is 10 steps. So they gave me the grade 7 step 10 to sort of match my salary as best they could. Sometimes you're taking a little bit of a hit, but that's your own choice.
Yeah.
But I always encourage people when they're applying, I say, well, look, if the position is open at a GS7, 9, 11, 12, and 13, if you think you can qualify for all of them, you should apply for all of them because each list is different. Yeah. So if you're not going to apply for a job at a higher grade, you don't know if you're going to be able to get it or not. So
interesting. I know the woman that I did speak to at the fair. She did talk a lot about expectations of the job in terms of lifestyle. She said you'll be traveling a lot. Yeah. I don't know if that was specifically for the FBI, but from your experiences, your colleagues, what type of lifestyle are you looking at? She said that getting married would be difficult, maybe at least in your first couple of years or whatever. But
so different agencies are going to have different needs for travel. So, if you're an FBI agent, you're working on a violation that has to do with maybe national security, you might be traveling a little bit more. If you're doing something involving national security where you're, having to go to different cities to deal with different things. Travel for me has not ever been really an issue.
Okay.
A little bit of travel here and there. Most of my cases are locally, so if I have to travel, it's because there's some overreaching need to go, or if I'm attending a conference or speaking at an event or something like that. For me, the biggest thing has always been the hours. This job has a great amount of flexibility, and generally speaking, the government gives you enough rope to hang yourself. If you do a good job and you're working, you're generally left alone. If you want to put forth a good effort, then you're gonna put in the hours. And I think I'm an A-type personality, which means that
I think so.
I want to work, right? I'm always trying to move the ball forward. I'm always trying to move things several ways ahead, right?
Absolutely.
And that's
even in your jiu-jitsu.
It's in the jiu-jitsu, right? So for me, it's always been the hours. I've always worked way in excess of what the job required me to work, because I always wanted to do the better job, and I always felt like if I had this great gift that the government gave me of a career plus a pension and lifetime health care, that I should do something that I felt was the right thing.
Absolutely.
I do believe karma is a bitch, right? And you need to sort of do the right thing, and that's affected my life in a lot of positive ways, because I've gotten to work some really good cases. I've gotten to meet a lot of good people. I just looked the other day, and I've recovered over $500 million to the Medicare program from fraud. And I think I had something like 160 people that I put in jail over the 22 years for criminal violations.
That's incredible.
And so that's been the plus. The negative is that the hours that I've worked, a little bit because the job has required it, a little bit by my choosing, has worked as a detriment to a lot of my professional and personal relationships. I think that, I put the job ahead of a lot of things in my life that looking back, I probably shouldn't have done. I don't have regrets over them, because I still think at the end of the day I did a good job, and I think that I can put my head on the pillow knowing I did that. And I always will say, no matter what, I always tried my best to do the right thing, and sometimes the right thing doesn't always work out, right? But I always tried my best to sort of do that right thing. But I always tended to put this job higher in my mental scale than I think I should have, looking back. I don't know how much I would have changed, because I like the job, and so I like doing the job. But I definitely think that looking back, there are probably some things that I would have tweaked a little differently than I did. And come another 2 weeks when I turn 50, I'm eligible to retire.
Really?
I'm not going. I'll have 24 and a half years.
That's incredible.
And so I'll have the time. I'm not going to retire, but the one thing that turning 50 has caused me to do is be a little bit more introspective about my pluses, my neutrals, and my negatives, right? Which is a little bit of the jiu-jitsu, right? The plus minus, right? You train with people who are better than you, train with people who are worse than you. And I've done that a little bit introspectively with life, because I just think that when I look back, I look at the things that I was good at, I look at the things I was bad at, and I try to think about why was I bad at that? And some of those are relationships. I really think like a lot of the relationships I've had personally, when I look back, some of those failures were the result of putting the job ahead of those relationships. I think professionally, I didn't stay in contact with some people that I had no reason to not be in contact with, because I just was focused on working the job. So there's a little bit of introspectiveness that has occurred.
Absolutely. In terms of advice for anybody that is interested in working in something like that, would you tell them, in that sense, to make sure that you do put that time and focus into your relationships? I think I'm starting to do that now a lot more, now that I've sort of had that sort of self-realization, and realize that I have less. I think I probably have less time on this planet than we hope to have. Right. Yeah. And
I think I'm
always
right.
A friend of mine just passed away from high school, like same age as me.
Yeah.
Like just recently.
Yeah. So, when you're 20 years old, you obviously have more life in front of you. I have less life in front of me than behind me, right? So I need to think about what's more important. And, I used to think about, I'm going to stay in this job until they kick me out the door, which is at 57. And I used to say I'm going to stay in this job until they kick me out the door, and then I'm going to do something else or whatever. And I don't have that attitude anymore. My attitude is way different.
Yeah.
I don't know how much longer I'm going to stay. It's certainly not going to be that long because there's things that I want to do, and
absolutely,
I still have people in this world that I need to try to move forward with, because it's always now it's really about moving the ball forward and moving things forward, and everything to me now is I'm going to celebrate the Tuesdays versus just some special event, or everything is several moving it.
Absolutely,
what's on the calendar next is really what it's about.
That's I think that's some really good advice. I think when I interviewed Ron, he talked about something that hit me really strongly was there is no such thing as the future. There is no such thing as the past. The past is a memory. It is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. All we have is now. And just from hearing what you're saying, like, we only have what's in front of us,
right?
And sometimes it is just the job, sometimes it is a relationship and things like that. But we have to count that cost. We have to figure out what is important. And unfortunately, for some people, time has passed, and now you're starting to pick it up. But I think what's important is that you didn't continue to keep following that, right? You figured it out. You're seeing your faults, and you're introspectively looking into yourself.
It took me a long time. But,
I think. But see, here's the thing. Even if it was a long time, I think what's very important for people to know is for themselves is like, you do need to take time to look into yourself. Like, I think a lot of people on this planet live on this earth with never even thinking about that until it's too late.
Yeah.
Until it's like, oh crap, I got cancer and I'm dying.
Right.
Like, you had an opportunity to look at it, now, and you're about to retire, maybe in the next year or two or whatever, but, certainly you said not until you're 57, but, you're thinking about it,
sure.
And you're, it sounds like you're looking forward to, that next stage in life, which is, I'm very happy to hear that. I think a lot of people get sad,
Yeah, no, I just, I think sometimes I realize that sometimes it's just your time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there's someone else who needs to come and take this.
Yeah.
It's someone else's turn.
And you have a lot of other gifts. I mean, I think as a teacher, you're an incredible teacher. That's probably another stage to get into is teaching, whether if it's martial arts or whatever talking.
There's other stuff.
Yeah, there's always something. You've created a tremendous career for yourself. And in multiple areas of your life. So, you can be put anywhere and you'll thrive.
It's fine. I'm looking, whatever happens is going to happen, but I just need to move the
moving the ball.
Moving the ball forward.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So let's get into your martial arts background.
Sure.
You said you started in Taekwondo, I think, or
you're
like a 5-dan or something like that.
So I trained in Shoutout karate when I was a little kid, probably maybe like 13 or 14 years old.
So you're like a lifelong then?
Like something. So I started off with just Shoutout karate when I was probably 13 or 14 years old, and I did that for probably about 5 or 6 years or so, till I was maybe a sophomore in college. At that point, it was more like just going to like the karate club. It wasn't really even formalized anymore. And then when I was in graduate school, I had a guy in the dorm I was friends with who was a first degree in Taekwondo. And he started a club in the dorm. And there were maybe a half a dozen of us that would do it. It was 2 days a week. And I did it with him for probably a year and a half. And was really interested. I really liked it. So I did that with him for about a year and a half. Then I got out of graduate school. I came home and then continued going to different Taekwondo schools.
Oh, cool. Was it relatively the same?
So I trained. There's a bunch of different versions of Taekwondo. That's sort of like
It's like 10th Planet.
It's like the generic name for karate. Korean. But there's two main factions of Taekwondo. There's what's called the ITF, International Taekwondo Federation.
Oh, interesting.
WTF.
I never knew this.
Which is World Taekwondo.
WTF.
So World Taekwondo, World Taekwondo Federation is what you see in the Olympics.
Okay.
The continuous sparring.
Okay. Are they both points?
So continuous sparring is the points are gathered during the time limit.
Mm-hmm.
ITF focused on point sparring, which was the point is made, the action stops,
and
then
I
you
see.
break.
I did not know that.
And then the other main difference between ITF and WTF is because the WTF Taekwondo was really the sparring sport side.
Mm-hmm.
The ITF focused much more on the forms. Or like the karate.
Well, that makes sense.
The
yeah.
katas.
It's like the one hit.
Right.
And
so the ITF forms were always much longer, much more difficult, much more intricate, 70, 80 moves, whereas the Olympic style were much shorter because the focus was really on that explosive sort of kicking power and what have you. So this guy that I trained with was an ITF guy. The main instructor was this guy named Mark McCarthy, who was outside of Buffalo. I went to college in Buffalo, and I would drive 45 minutes to his school because he was one of the original guys. So there's this book. It's actually 7 or 8 or 10 volumes, the Encyclopedia of Taekwondo. And this guy, Mark McCarthy, is one of the original guys, and he's in this encyclopedia.
Wow.
So I got to learn. This guy was an American guy, spoke fluent Korean. We would do classes. He wouldn't say a word in English sometimes. He'd just be in class.
Can you speak a little bit?
Not a word. I just have to follow guys along the way.
Talk to Andy.
Nothing. Well, when I try to say a word or two to Andy, he looks at me because my Korean is the few words I know are so bad that there was one time where Bill Kim was there, and Bill Kim had to translate my Korean for Andy because it was so bad.
We should all go to a barbecue spot.
It was terrible. So I did Taekwondo for a number of years, and then really sort of jumped around to a bunch of different schools because when I went to Pennsylvania, there wasn't a lot there, so I just sort of trained there a little bit. Then I had a little bit of a break when I was a probation officer. I had a little bit of a break, and then when I moved to New Jersey, I lived in Woodbridge, and I joined an ITF school that was in on the Edison Woodbridge Ave, Edison Woodbridge border by Middlesex College, and that was an ITF school, and I got my black belt through that school.
Oh, okay.
And I actually stayed in Taekwondo. I jumped around to a couple different schools, but I essentially trained in Taekwondo and got a 4th degree black belt, and I was helping to teach a lot of classes at a school up in near Hillsborough. And probably so I started Jiu-Jitsu in 2006.
And this was when you had the 4th degree.
I already had my 4th degree. I've been a 4th degree black belt for a few years. So in January of 2006, the jiu-jitsu thing was always something that interested me, but I could never really find a place.
How did you even find it?
So I found jiu-jitsu. I was living up in Basking Ridge for a couple of years, and this is before David Adiv had his school out in Lebanon area. He was at the Somerset Hills Y, and I went and I took a couple of classes at his school. And I really liked it, but the time of the classes just didn't work for me with work. And I just could never get there. So it sort of went to the wayside. And then when I moved down here to Somerset, I was driving on 130 one day, and I drove by Brian's school on 130.
Oh, wow.
And
that was back in when?
It was January of 2006. So Brian started his school in May of 2005, and I walked in January of 2006. He had the sign that just said Jiu-Jitsu, and I drove by.
Brian's been open for how many years now?
I think in May in 2005 is when he opened up on 130. So I called him up, and he said, come on in, take a class. And I went on, I'll never forget it, I went on January 2nd, 2006.
Yeah,
and
I still have my sign-in sheet.
And I walked in the door, and Pete Normandia was there. And I walked in, and Pete was wearing a hoodie, and I'd never met Brian, so I didn't know it. Pete's in there. I'll never forget it. He was sweeping the floor, and I walked in. I said, "Oh, are you Brian?" He said, "No, I'm Pete." So I had spoken to Brian about taking a class, and Pete said, "I'm teaching class today." Pete was a blue belt, maybe 2-stripe blue belt, and my first jiu-jitsu lesson ever was with Pete. And I still joke about it. The first thing I ever learned was the weaving guard pass.
Yeah.
And I say that for 13 years now of training, or 12 years of training, I've been trying the weaving guard pass on Pete, and I can tell you that I've never gotten it on, never worked on anything.
He taught you something.
But the first jiu-jitsu lesson I ever had was with Pete.
Yeah. And you both got your black belt on the same day.
We did, yeah. Yeah, it was great. So, I have a lot, like, Pete as a person means a lot to me because I've trained him for a long time. But he's the first guy that I really had my first ever jiu-jitsu exposure to.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about the belts or any of that stuff. So I was training. I was training at the Taekwondo school Tuesdays and Thursdays. I was going up there. I was teaching an advanced kids class. I was teaching an adult class plus taking my class. It was sort of like a hybrid. I would teach it and then train at the same time.
Yeah.
And I was me and another guy were the two highest ranking students. The owner of the school was a 5th degree. And really, Taekwondo is an interesting art because once you get past 5th or 6th degree, any of the degrees are honorary because there were no more forms to learn. There were 24. There were 24 forms in Jiu-Jitsu, and once you've learned all of them...
Oh, Taekwondo, you mean.
I'm sorry, in Taekwondo, once you've learned all 24 forms, there are no other forms to learn, and by the time you've gotten to 5th degree, you've learned them all. So anything over 5th degree or 6th degree, I think is
how many did you need to learn?
I was a 4th degree, and I actually think I knew 2 or 3 of the next... I needed to know for 5th degree.
Oh, so
I had actually been eligible for 5th degree for a few years. My instructor hadn't been promoted to 6th, so he couldn't promote. You can only promote to one rank below your existing rank. But I was going Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I started training at Brian's on Wednesday mornings. I would go. He was doing a class on Wednesdays at 8:30, I think, in the morning.
Oh wow! You should bring that back.
Brian was a 2-stripe purple belt, and it was me, Brian, and Tony Bellavia, who was a 2 or 3 stripe blue belt.
I don't think I know Tony.
Tony from Nino's Pizza.
Oh, Tony!
Tony.
My goodness!
So I would go, and I would just go the one time, and I would pay the $20 class fee or whatever Brian was charging at the time, and I would go Wednesday mornings, and Brian would demo the move on me, so that Tony, because Tony was his real student, so that Tony could practice it, and then we would spend the hour with me just getting beaten up by Brian and Tony for the hour.
That's awesome.
Jiu-Jitsu, and every week I would get up and I would dust myself off and I would say, all right, fingers and toes, everything's still working. See you guys next week, and I just kept going on Wednesdays, and I did that for a year and a half. I just went one day a week. I was going on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Taekwondo, and at this point now, I'm starting to get a little bored with Taekwondo because I'm really not learning anything new. I'm starting to find I'm not really getting any more fitness out of it. It just, as an adult, I wasn't, an adult class wasn't really a lot of adults.
You weren't getting pushed anymore.
Yeah, I just felt like that there was something missing. Taekwondo always have a special place for me, but it was just sort of missing the mark a little bit. So I started adding in going on Saturday mornings as well. So I was going Wednesday mornings and I was going on Saturday mornings. And that went on for another couple of years. It took me 2.5 years to get my blue belt. So once I started going that extra day, I started to learn a lot more, right? So I got my blue belt in May of 2008. So it was almost 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And that's about the time I started cutting down a little bit on my Taekwondo time. I wasn't going every Tuesday and Thursday. The ride to the school was it was near Hillsborough, so the ride was sometimes a little difficult. Classes were late at night, so sometimes I wouldn't go until 10 o'clock at night.
I see YB Choi's open.
So it was a little difficult. And then really, I think when I really made my decision in 2011, I went back to school for a graduate certificate in healthcare administration, just because I enjoyed doing the healthcare stuff. It was a 2-year program, and the classes a lot of times were on Tuesday nights or Thursday nights. It was one night a week, but a lot of times I wasn't able to even make the class. And that, in conjunction with the fact that I had a lot of work to do for the class, plus real work, plus trying to have a home life, I just sort of said, I'm taking a leave of absence from Taekwondo, and that was in maybe 2011, and the leave of absence became permanent. Because I started going more and more to Jiu-Jitsu and starting to do 3 and 4 days a week and finding that I was really just enjoying it a lot more.
Yeah.
Just mentally, physically, it just became a better place.
Yeah.
So I just started to just ramp that up. And then it got to a point where I was going Wednesdays, I was going Saturdays. We were trying to do open mats a little bit later on Fridays. A lot of times guys wouldn't show up. So probably, 5 or 6 years ago, probably 2012 or 13 is when we started doing these regular Monday and Friday deals. And that's been, so my schedule has been Friday 7:30, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Yeah.
For years now. It's been a good 5 or 6 years that it's been those 4 days. And even for a little bit, I was trying to toss in a Wednesday, but I just too much.
It's tough
between work, but honestly, just you need those days
Recovery.
off.
Yeah.
So Taekwondo's always got a place for me, because that's where I sort of really
it was your foundation.
My foundation, but. Once I really got bitten by the jiu-jitsu, the jiu-jitsu bug. And Brian says, he's told people he never thought I would stick because I was only going 1 day a week. Once in a while, I would throw a private in with him where, I'd do a half an hour. I couldn't even do an hour, I'd do a half hour, so out of shape. I just remember rolling with him and, getting my beating from him. And I would just say, like, time or tap. And he would say, but I haven't done anything to make you tap. Just, like, work. He really would just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. He wouldn't let me, wouldn't let me bow, but he would say he didn't think I was going to stick around because I was only going that 1 day a week, and then even when I was doing it twice a week, it wasn't, in the beginning it wasn't consistent. I guess I fooled him, right?
He's like, you're the toughest Jewish guy on this planet outside of and next to Jay Weinberg.
Next to Jay Weinberg, right?
Who I'm gonna try to get on the show too. Jay's my lawyer, but he's everyone's lawyer. He's everyone's lawyer. So, would you say that martial arts has helped you with your job and everything? I mean, probably, obviously, right? So like in life, job, personal, relationships, things like that. Has jiu-jitsu been, or Taekwondo,
So I mean, I think generally, out of the I feel confident to be able to protect myself kind of a situation that jiu-jitsu gives you. If anything, jiu-jitsu gives you some level of confidence that most people don't have. It makes people come out of their shells. It gives you there's that, like there's that aspect, but there's also the aspect of that when you're in an uncomfortable or a bad situation, that your anxiety level doesn't go from 0 to 100, right? It's I've been in these uncomfortable positions before. I've been in these bad places before, and I don't feel like I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And I find that that's a big thing. I've had a lot of trials where criminal defendants want to go to trial, and I'm the case agent, so I'm involved in the trial. I'm having to testify. I've been called as a witness by defense attorneys who put you on the stand and just want to spend days just yelling and screaming at you,
just trying to destroy you.
And the thing is to just it's sort of the calm in the storm. And I really do relate that back, like there's always that phrase, jiu-jitsu is life, and I really do believe that there's a large aspect in that when you're in these sort of adverse conditions where there's a level of discomfort and you're in a place where you're not happy at that moment, that you just sort of put your mind in a place and realize, like, I'm going to keep this, like the homeostasis,
zen,
right? That zen.
It's okay.
And it's okay. Like, it's going to be all right. I'm not going to, I don't get jacked up. I'm not a screamer. I'm not a yeller. I don't really get agitated like in that way. And I think that it's important that that sort of transcends out of jiu-jitsu. So I do think, like, the physical aspect about, I'm 50 years old, but I don't feel like I'm 50. I'm around a lot of younger guys. I don't act like I'm 50.
Yeah.
I definitely think that jiu-jitsu helps you with feeling younger. And, I know a lot of guys that are 50 years old who I think are just waiting to die, right? They're just, they wake up every, they're out of shape.
Absolutely.
Or, they don't exercise, they don't take care of themselves in any way, and that transcends physically, mentally, a lot of ways.
I had I don't know, it was kind of like a shock, or not a shock, but just what do you call it, like a external like realization. Like just walking through Costco this past Saturday, like legit, like this past Saturday, I just was walking through Costco, and I just was looking at like just the amount of people that were overweight, but not like just in that sense, but not like, you can look overweight and be kind of still healthy, but I'm talking about like overweight, but looking very like tired,
waiting to die,
and just very like
just every day, just getting up and just sickly, just waiting
people in rascals and stuff like that, and I'm like, man, I saw this older woman walking with the walker, and I'm like, man, I know my grandmother doesn't walk in a walker. Right. Is it, like some people kind of just, I don't know if they given up,
Right.
or if it's maybe they had a health issue. I don't want to judge,
Right.
But at the same time, like you said before, you don't want to do anything that was that could have been in your power to prevent.
Right. It's just right.
Right.
I say all the time, I want to be the guy where when I die, I don't want to be the guy in the coffin where they say, "Boy, if he just didn't eat that cheeseburger."
Yeah.
You want to be the guy who goes, "My God, he was so healthy."
That's crazy.
Right.
Yeah,
you want to be that guy.
That shark ate him.
Yeah. So jiu-jitsu. So the physical aspect of jiu-jitsu is one thing, but there's that whole other area that people, when they start off as a white belt and you try to have that conversation with them, like they don't get it, they don't understand it. It becomes an evolution where you just realize like there's that. I'm in this adverse situation. I'm with this guy who weighs 100 pounds more than me. He's on top. And his entire goal is to put me to sleep or remove my arm from my body and beat me with it.
Yeah.
And you're not freaking out. You're calm. You're in that that Zen space. And it really does, work its way. I mean, I've had cases where I've been in trials where I've had defense attorneys screaming and yelling at me and pointing the finger, and I'm literally I'm just sitting there in the chair.
That's cool,
My
bro.
hands are here, and I'm just I'm squeezing away. In my mind, I'm choking them to death, but I'm just like, no, yes, keeping
You're getting your gi.
keeping that calm, right? Just
slipping his gi behind his neck.
I'm keeping that calmness because that's really what it teaches you. It teaches you that even in the worst situations, you still have that opportunity to make lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And get to that that spot. So, but I think that's true. It doesn't matter. When I did Taekwondo, it'd be the same thing. Just in a standing up situation.
Yeah, it's a little
bit different.
Yeah.
Obviously, jiu-jitsu is a much more aggressive.
Yeah,
sport.
I mean, well, there's a constant pressure, right?
It's right. There's
in
no
Taekwondo, you can kind of
it's
take
an
your
in and
time,
out. It's right.
move around.
Jiu-jitsu is constant.
Yeah.
That big person is on you. That guy is on you. That girl is on you.
The healthy,
5 minutes.
fit
They're
overweight
just
guy.
right. They're it's 5 minutes or 6 minutes, however long you're going. It's that constant pressure. There's none of that. So it's do I freak out now and be the 2-minute Hercules? Or do I pace myself and realize this is a bad place? I can get into a better place.
Yeah.
And that really, that's not just jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu just helps you, I think, get to that realization. And
Absolutely.
as people spend their time training, they start to realize that it really isn't just about going on the mat for an hour and crushing a guy. It's it's all of the things around it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of videos where you see police officers trying to handle somebody, and it's like they have no grappling experience whatsoever. You mentioned before that in your training that there's an extensive groundwork program now. I'm assuming police officers, your local cops, in your towns.
Yeah.
I don't know if they get that same training. It doesn't. Maybe not.
Yeah,
maybe.
I don't know. I know. For us, it's we do firearms 4 times a year. We do our defensive tactics 4 times a year, and the ground fighting is 1 block in that quarter. And
but it's nowhere near.
Yeah, and I would say it's not even. I'd say it's to check a box because it's
okay. So it's not like going to a jiu-jitsu class.
No, it's a 2-hour block or 3-hour block.
So
once every 3 months. It's basically to check a box. Just
would you say then
basic skill set just to say okay, hopefully it's more for weapon retention, whatever. A lot of the police academies I've seen around the state are getting much more involved with getting it.
Oh, interesting.
You see guys that are going to academies and helping to teach blocks of instruction. So I think it's getting better.
That's good.
But I think a lot of by and large, it's something that. We obviously talk about it and we encourage it. We have a bunch of guys at our place that are cops, and that
20% are probably cops.
It's a skill set that I think it's a
absolutely necessary.
It's a tool for the toolbox,
yeah.
Right? It's a tool for the toolbox. You watch videos all the time where you'll see cops who have a jiu-jitsu background in a real life situation, and then you see a situation with a cop who has no jiu-jitsu background having to deal with a situation, and sometimes it works out well, sometimes it doesn't work out well. But the guy that doesn't have that skill set, would it have worked out better if he had that skill set? I don't know. I'd like to think that you at least have a better chance.
Yeah.
More of a fighting chance.
What do they say? It's better to know than not to know.
Right.
Yep. So you are about to turn 50,
Mhm.
and you've had this long career in law enforcement and martial arts. You're probably, I mean, you're in incredible shape, you know, and from what I see, I know you've only maybe complained once or twice about something that may have been a serious injury. How have you done it? How have you continued to stay on the mats? Have this long career and just keep going. Like, I know a lot of people get hurt and they're like, oh, my back, and they just never come back, you know. Do you, like, I know we talk a lot about recovery tools. Like, you came into my house and you're like, oh, you got that acupressure mat too?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, that thing is, by the way, is amazing. I'm going to put a link where you can buy it on Amazon. But the Tim Tam.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you know, do you accredit your recovery, anything that you believe in? Because you are a example of longevity.
So I think some of it for me has been knowing who to roll with and when, right? So I've noticed in the past couple of years, particularly in the past probably year, and really since I've gotten my black belt for sure, that I've become a little bit more selective about who I'm training with. I think that's because I want to be able to continue to train, and so
no
I think
ego. You gotta have no ego to do that.
And I think I need to be able to be selective and say to someone, yeah, I'm really not in a physical position to train with you today, or whatever it is. So that's a little bit of it. A little bit of it is knowing when I really should take that day off. And I'll tell you, yesterday I debated about whether to even come and train, because yesterday I was the piece of wood being hit with the nail by the hammer. And I don't regret coming and training. And I took my beatings like a man. I took them well. I got tapped a lot yesterday. I got tapped by guys who never tapped me, and I got tapped a couple of times.
Sometimes, yeah.
And it was fine. I don't care. I don't really care. But I was also just cognizant of where I needed to stop for the day. So I think that's an important thing. Is a little bit of it is, what are the injuries that are the nagging ones? What are the ones I need to take a day off to recover from?
Yeah.
What are the ones I need to maybe think about, is this worse than it really is?
Yeah.
And I think it's just that is the thing for longevity, is a combination of knowing when to take the day off, knowing that Jiu-Jitsu is still going to be there tomorrow, knowing that I'll still be there for Jiu-Jitsu tomorrow, and also just knowing, like, okay, when I say I'm looking to just light roll drill with a guy, like, I truly mean it.
Yeah.
Like, I truly mean it. I'm not going to say it and then, like some guys we train with, it's 80%. I also know that my first couple of matches I've got to do as a little bit lighter. You know, like you and I are, like, I love getting my first match in with you. I love doing it with guys like Jason, because, like, it's my first match. I'm also, I also got, close to 20 years on you. And I just can't go at that level. I just can't. You recognize it. I recognize it, and it's great. And
I'll still get choked, man.
Yeah, and I don't care. And I get tapped 100 times by someone. I don't care. Like, and so a lot of it is me just having to do that. It's having to realize that I'm training with a guy half my age. I gotta know when I gotta step away from it. Yeah, because it's just really it. And I need that half hour of stretching beforehand, or 20 minutes of stretching beforehand. And I really need my first few 5-minute matches to get that warm up in. I need them to be with someone who's gonna give me a little bit of a movement and, make me work for it. But not just be 180.
Kill you.
180 miles an hour. I can't. I just can't do it. And I think the older guys, we call ourselves the Great Tigers, the 40 and over, and now there's, we're going to be like the really Great Tigers. We talk about that, and those are the guys, sometimes those are the guys that you just pick to roll with. We joke about the handicap section, which is the combination of the old guys and the injured guys. What
I thought was so cool is you guys all actually went out for dinner one night.
Yeah, we've done that a few times.
I think that, man, I don't know what other, clubs do or jiu-jitsu schools, but I don't know. There's something special when I see that, I don't necessarily hear these things when I see other gyms or whatever. But the older fellas getting together. You guys call yourselves the Great Tigers.
Yeah, we've done it a few times.
Yeah, it's pretty. I think just that having that family is really important. But yeah, absolutely. So basically, for the older guys that train, or are thinking about it, like, definitely a strong warm up, right? Like, I mean, personally, I created a whole warm up system because I've been getting injured left and right, and I realized I'm like, man, I'm not 20 anymore. Like I feel like I'm still 20,
right?
But I'm 32. You know, I'm about to be 33, and I'm like, wait, my body. Like, there's that meme that came out the other day. It was like, once you're over 30, you no longer get injured. You get permanent little disabilities.
That's
right?
true. Right.
And
There's a similar meme where a guy says, I took a week off from jiu-jitsu. I slept great. My joints didn't hurt. I didn't, nothing ached. I didn't take any pain reliever. It was the worst week of my life. Right? And it is
Absolutely,
true.
it's true.
I mean, I think, every day I wake up, something hurts. Every day I go to bed, something hurts. Something hurts every day. But it really does feel good because you're alive, right? Mm-hmm. The person sitting there waiting to die is just waiting to die. Everything hurts for the wrong reasons. I want things to hurt for the right reasons.
Exactly.
And I want to know that, every day I'm getting out of bed with that, with the good soreness. There's good hurt and there's bad hurt, right?
Absolutely. So,
yeah,
that's awesome. So, I guess taking care of the warm up, when you're older, you get the privilege of choosing who you get to roll with. And just, being smart. I think what you said is so important, not even just for the older guys, but for the younger guys too. We're not all built the same. It's just the way it is, right? Genetics are genetics.
Correct.
Body types are body types.
Right.
Like, it is what it is. Just you truly have to leave that ego behind if you want like a long career. If you're looking to compete, fight, and do all that stuff, all right, then go balls to the wall, right? But you can only do that for so long, right? But if you want a long career, if you're a lifelong martial artist, you have to leave that ego behind.
I've always said I was a jiu-jitsu hobbyist. I've never competed. I've never had an interest in competing.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help people who are competing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, for me, it's...
And you can't take anything away from you either, because you are legit black belt.
I enjoy it, and at this point now I'm going because, as I always say, it beats going and walking on a treadmill at some $10 or $20 a month gym 3 times a week with the drones.
Absolutely.
Like, it's a mental, it's physical. I feel good. I grew up as a non-athletic kid. I grew up as a chubby kid.
Same here. I was a fat,
for me,
fat kid.
For me, it's really just about. I don't want to be the guy who just at 50 years old feeling like I'm 90. Like, as long as I'm able to do it. And I think it's just a matter of just being able to understand when you've got to pace yourself. That's really all it is.
Yep.
I know I'm never going to be able to be at the level of a Jeff Brown. I'm not an athletic guy. I never grew up athletic.
Well, he's also 20.
Right, but I mean, I was never athletic. When I was 24, I wasn't athletic. I've never grown up athletic. Jiu-Jitsu comes very hard for me. It really does. I spend a lot of time working on it because it didn't come naturally to me. I think for some people that it doesn't come naturally to, they can make it. It's never been that way. Everything has been a
you're a
process.
perseverer. You just keep going.
It's just keep coming. I just kept coming. Grinder. And I would just say, well, you didn't kill me today, so I'll see you guys tomorrow. It's really how I felt it. And now it's like, well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I just think that you just have to, as you get older, you want to stay in this. You just have to understand this is when I need to stop for the day.
Yeah.
This is when I need to take a rest from that match. This is when I'm taking a day off.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Absolutely.
And that's it.
I think for the viewers, if you guys have, family members who are older that, you're like, man, they really need a life change, right? I personally would highly encourage, getting people involved that are in the older age. I think a lot of people are afraid. They're like, man, this is like, I can't do this.
Yeah, I started when I was 36.
Yeah, look at Mike
37,
Toft,
38.
right?
Yeah, somebody. Mike Toft said he was 50.
Our old man Mike, right? Yeah. Our real old man, like we call him Grandpa.
50 when he walked in the door.
Yeah.
I was 30. I think it was 38, 37 or 38 when I started. So I was older when I started too.
And I'm sure he probably wasn't in the best shape.
Yeah.
If you roll with him, the guy's...
He came in at 50 years old. He's
tough, man.
Tough.
Yep. So, I think it's for everybody. At any age. I think I saw a video of it was like some 80-year-old grandmother that just started.
Right.
And I was like, man, I want to, that's so inspiring.
Sure, absolutely.
I think, jiu-jitsu is that martial art that, I mean, granted, you find a good school, right? Because there's a lot of crazy places too. But, I mean, if you guys have, family members or something, share this video with them, and you have a person that is about to turn 50, and just look at him, right? Eric is probably, in great shape. and his mind is clear, and if you probably didn't have this, you probably wouldn't be in that same state.
Oh yeah,
right?
I agree.
So so absolutely. So continuing on, we're what time is it? Yeah, it's getting close. But I kind of wanted to get into some topics about like interesting the what's hot in the media at the moment in terms of guns, ownership of guns, even marijuana. Right, marijuana. I think I just learned. Everybody's like, oh, it's gonna get legalized. It's gonna get legalized, but I forget. A lot that there's state law and that there's federal law, right? Like, a lot of people are just thinking, oh, it's gonna get legalized, and but they don't really know exactly. They're just reading a quick 5-minute internet article or like a meme,
right?
And it's like, oh, that's what it is,
Yep.
But they really have no idea of what's really going on. So I guess we could talk about the gun stuff first. Personally, what is your opinion on ownership? Should a citizen like myself, not have access, or should I be able to have access? I think coming from a law enforcement person who have actually seen crimes or have heard from colleagues of things that can happen when you don't know how to protect yourself in any situation. What's real. A lot of people that speak usually come out of from emotion. What is your opinion on it? If you'd like to share.
So I think that it's going to be it's a never-ending debate, right? It's a never-ending debate, only because you've got the Second Amendment that talks about the right to bear arms.
Yes.
And then you've got the two ends of the spectrum of people who say that that's an absolute right, and you have people who say there's a limit on that right. I think that the current state of affairs is that. And I think that this is the case with a lot of the laws that we have, is that we have a lot of laws that aren't enforced or implemented to the level that they should be, and that it's not really a matter of whether or not citizens should have guns or not have guns so much as it is, are the current methods by which people can purchase guns adequate?
I absolutely agree with that.
And does that then percolate beyond? So in New Jersey, where you can get your purchase card, but very difficult to carry a gun. It's
incredibly
nearly impossible to carry a gun. And obviously one of the big issues that's coming up that's in the forefront in that area is this national reciprocity discussion that's going on.
I didn't know about this.
So national reciprocity will essentially say, and I'm not 100% sure of it, but it essentially says that if you've got if one state has given you the authority to carry a gun in that state, that will cross over to other states. So there's this big thing going on. Union Hill does a course for Utah.
Yeah,
for
I saw that. Yeah.
So Utah's non-resident permit is recognized, like 30-something states can carry that.
New Jersey might be
so the argument then becomes that if you live in New Jersey and you can't get a permit to carry your gun in New Jersey, but you have a Utah non-resident permit, does that create a loophole to create a situation where you can carry a gun? And so, without going into the politics of it and all that, I think that it's the argument that falls into the category of the never-ending argument. It's a circular argument because there's always going to be, this person's going to say that. There's a counter argument. It's always going to be that the two sides, and there's never going to be a meshing of those. There never will be. I think that the issue I think that exists generally is whether you're a lawful carrier or a non-lawful carrier. More guns on the street means more of something, right?
Yeah.
And for every instance where there's an incident with a bad guy getting a gun, someone is going to point to an incident with a good guy who had a gun and stopped a bad guy, right?
Uh-huh.
There's logs all the times that are going to discuss that. So, but what's that balance? And I think part of that balance is that the checks that are out there that are weakened, you read these articles about in some states you can go to these swap meets and just private purchase of guns, right? Like handguns and rifles, and if I had a long gun in New Jersey and I wanted to sell it to you, we just sign a document. And
we would have to do it through an FFL though.
A handgun you do, a rifle you don't. So
I didn't know that.
So there's like private purchases of guns and things like that. But you see these these swap meets where they're just basically buying and selling guns in the street.
I didn't know that.
And there's all kinds of issues, I think, that are inherent with that. And so the question becomes, are the guns that are out there that are being used to perpetuate crimes guns that were lawfully purchased and owned by people versus guns that were illegally stolen or this or that? And so you get it becomes this political argument that'll never go away, because then you've got, this shooter who shot up the school lawfully purchased his assault rifle, but he didn't check the box that said yes, or check the box that said no, or the police failed to do a mental health, or nobody heeded the warnings, or, there's always going to be some failure of the system.
Wow.
Right? So where do you fix that failure? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not an expert on that. So I just think it's a never-ending argument, and there's going to be the argument one way or another always. And I'm not sure where that middle ground is. Is middle ground? I don't know. You go to a state where it's very liberal to get a firearms,
or even concealed carry,
and then I had a friend who I think he was living in New Hampshire, and you go buy a gun with your license, and I'd say, well, what if you wanted to carry it concealed? He go, well, you just put it in your pocket. I mean, that was the way some states are like that. And so does that work in that state? But does it work in a state like that? Does it not? Does that maybe it works in that state, but it doesn't work in New Jersey, or it doesn't work. You get national reciprocity, and now a lot of that goes out the window. But how does that? What does that ultimately do? Does that mean that we now have more good guys carrying guns, but then at the end of the day, I'm in the mall and I see something happen, and I see one guy pulling out a gun to stop another guy. Who do you know?
Who do you know?
And the big fear is always, in law enforcement, they always talk about blue on blue, right? It's two cops who don't know that they're both cops, or a cop in uniform with a cop that's not in uniform. I'm in the mall and I'm an off-duty guy and I'm carrying my gun and I see something happen and I intervene. How do I stop the cop in uniform from understanding that I am actually one of the good guys? Yeah. It's nearly impossible.
You'd have to scream, I'm blue. Or
however, but the point being is, by the time that happens, I can be shot too.
Exactly.
So you sort of have that as a situation. The fact that I'm carrying a gun lawfully, am I in a position where I feel like I'm carrying that gun for my own personal protection, or am I looking to protect others? Where do you draw that? Where do you?
That's so difficult.
So that's the never-ending problem, is putting more guns in the hands of lawfully authorized people may have a great intention, but what becomes the ultimate consequence? I don't know the answer to that, because I don't know if it's really.
And then there's a level of training that needs to happen.
Correct. And what is that level of Are we getting people who are not knowing how to fix their problems? Right. We get back to the very beginning, right?
I think personally, concealed carry terrifies me. If you're not a law enforcement, or if you're not in law enforcement, I'm like, I don't know, just imagining walking around my neighborhood with a gun in my pocket. Right. This doesn't make any sense to me. And New Jersey, if everybody was able to do that, and this was like carrying your wallet, then whatever, right? But I live in New Jersey, so the idea that my neighbor could be outside with his pistol in his pocket freaks me out. Now, in my home, though, I want to have a weapon. Because you never know.
I think it's a different discussion.
Yeah, that's a whole different thing.
It's a different discussion. Firearms for home defense versus firearms for concealed carry. They're potentially two different discussions.
Yeah. Right? But I think the whole idea is it's gun ownership versus no gun ownership, right? So that's where, I think there's layers to it. Correct. And again, you can't, it's going to be a never-ending discussion.
Correct.
So I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think a lot of people just want to say no or yes, right? But it truly
isn't. Right.
There is no, there's pros and cons to both sides. Right. So moving on to the marijuana law. Can you break away the misconceptions and put the actual facts?
So I really can't, because I don't know enough about it. But what I can tell you generally is that you've got the federal government still deems marijuana as an illegal substance.
And
right?
what is a Schedule 1?
It's a Schedule 1 drug.
Which is the highest.
Right. Yeah. So it falls into the same category as heroin and cocaine, which means Schedule 1 means it has no medicinal value. So I know that much because I work opioid cases, so I do understand that much. So marijuana fits that category as having no medicinal use, and so therefore the federal government still says that marijuana is a
now why it's on Schedule 1.
Drug.
There's lots of discussion and debate about it.
Right.
That's not important. What we're talking about, this is the law.
So
federal.
Right. So states will come through, and states will create a law that will legalize it either medicinally for medical use or recreational use, and some states have obviously both parts of that. And so, but it is still a violation of federal law. It's just whether or not an agency is given the directive to enforce that or not.
Yeah,
and, generally it's right. So you can look at the marijuana laws and take the libertarian perspective, which is
everything
decriminalize it. Let's tax it. Let's make it, because it really is. There's a financial boom that comes out of it.
Yeah.
Right?
I think Colorado was a great example.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So states are talking.
They got themselves out of debt.
Right. So there's a whole side to the marijuana argument, and locking up people for de minimis amounts of marijuana, clogging up the court system, and like there's a whole theoretical, getting back to like a criminal justice, there's this whole theoretical argument regarding victimless crimes. And so there's always these arguments about things like prostitution and drug use.
Yes.
Like, is prostitution a victimless crime because people are voluntarily engaging in some of those activities?
You think.
Sometimes, right? Yeah, but in some cases they are, some cases they're not. Drug use, sometimes it's, by choice, sometimes it's by circumstance, but so there's this never-ending discussion, about that from obviously, a libertarian perspective. There's, decriminalize it all, right?
If you want to use heroin, go ahead.
Right, and then you get different factions, conservative, and then, some of your more liberal, where there's like this pipeline of nothing should be legalized, something should be legalized. The problem ultimately is going to be that you're going to have a group of people that are in that very conservative base who are going to still feel like that marijuana with other drugs are a scourge on society, a scourge on society, and that they should not be allowed to enter the marketplace because they're a scourge on society. But then you've got others who are saying, well, marijuana has this medicinal value. It really doesn't have this problem. It doesn't have that problem. The going joke is sort of, you've never seen a person high on marijuana going and robbing a bank. They're looking for a bag of Doritos and a night off. But the guy who's a harder core drug user is going out. Those are the drug seeking people. They're out there robbing the drugstores and the bodegas and this and that to feed their habits. So I think it falls in that same category. It's a never-ending argument, but I think that there's research that's currently out there being done to show what is the value of marijuana. I know I have a friend personally who has MS and has been doing medicinal marijuana for years, both edibles and smokable, just smoking, from a pipe. And this person has been swearing for years that it is helping with their symptoms, making them feel better, helping them with symptoms. And look, is that something that is there a placebo effect? Maybe. Is there a medical effect that I can't tell because I'm not seeing the pain that they're in? But this person is saying to me, when I do an edible or I smoke, the pain goes away. And, I'm able to function.
I think even in the sense of like cancer patients that can't eat after they get their chemo.
As a pain management or an
appetite
stimulation.
You can't. That's it's a to me it's like this should be there available. You know. Personally, I mean I've never smoked or used it to get high. I have no intention of ever doing that. Although what I am interested in marijuana is the hemp. It's just, I mean, if you look at what hemp can do, it's incredible. I think the reason why we can't grow it in this country is tax issues. And then also, I know they're finding now a lot of positives with the CBD side of it, the cannabinoids. I've used cannabinoids for my sleep. I didn't really feel that much help, but for pain, it did relieve a lot of like after injury. And CBDs don't get you high. It's more of the medicinal aspects of marijuana, but and they're totally legal. You don't need a prescription. You can literally go on Amazon and buy it.
Right.
But so that part I'm interested in, but the everything else is like it doesn't have no interest to me. But personally, I think there's big pharma involved in terms of why it's Schedule 1 and illegal as it is. But I mean that's a whole different conversation.
Sure.
I don't want to get into. But so the misconception is that it's legal, everything's cool.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest misconception is that when a state passes a law in which they legalize it in whatever form they're going to legalize it, whether it be a smokable form, an edible combination, whether you do it medicinal, recreational, that there is still the fact that the federal government is saying that
this is illegal.
And where that's actually was a problem I don't know if it's still a problem, but in the short term, the problem was a lot of banks didn't want to deal with the dispensaries because the banks would then be complicit with laundering the proceeds of
very
drug deals.
Yeah, I never even thought about that.
Because money laundering,
is a real,
so a business was bringing in all this cash, and then what do you do with it? You want to go to your bank,
but
and you want
can't
to deposit,
because it's federally illegal. Yeah.
Correct, because banks have to go by federal law.
Wow.
Through regulatory matters, and the problem becomes that you have a bank who doesn't want to do because they're potentially knowingly laundering
drug money
because it's a dispensary.
That is some food for thought.
That was a problem for a while.
Yeah, that's some food for thought, man. That's interesting. That alone is that's very interesting for me. I mean, I'm in regulatory. That's what I do for work. Just thinking about the regulations on that, and just that that's very interesting for me. But we're getting close to the end. So just. Every person I interview, I always do this last tidbit. Something interesting about yourself. I know two really interesting things about you that I thought were really interesting or cool. Was you ordained Jeff, your best friend? I believe your best friend. You did his wedding, right? Which I thought was pretty interesting. I don't know how you got that. I was told that it's actually pretty easy to get.
It is.
To become an ordained minister or rabbi or whatever. Which route did you go, rabbi?
No, it's just ordained. Ordained through. It was like Universal Life Church online. I've done 4 weddings.
My brother was trying to be an ordained rabbi. He was like, I can make things kosher. I was like. You're not Jewish. But so apparently it's pretty easy to do that.
I've done 4 weddings, including Ron's.
Oh, you did Ron's?
So I did Jeff's.
Oh, wow.
I did Jeff's and I did Ron's.
Yeah.
And I did a
Jeff is a sergeant, right? And
Jeff's a detective. In South Brunswick.
South Brunswick, yeah.
So I did Jeff's wedding. I did Ron's wedding.
That's so funny.
I did a coworker and I did a referral from a friend.
So you've done that.
So I've done 4 weddings. I did 4 weddings. It was great fun.
Yeah,
I loved it.
That's so funny.
It meant a lot to me that I was asked to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It meant a lot to me to be asked to do it. It meant a lot to do Jeff's wedding.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had the best seat. I had the best seat in the house.
Yeah. So that's pretty funny. Another thing is you're big into DIY. I know you've helped me a lot with my house. I was able to do my tiles. Yep. Redo toilet and all. Sink or whatever. You gave me the confidence to get into it. I thought this is something you got to pay somebody to do. Yeah. But just like computers, everything can be built from the ground up and redone. And you're really into that stuff. Yeah. And you obviously we're both members of the same gun club, so you're obviously into guns and shooting, marksmanship, and then BJJ. So those are the things that I know of you. Is there something that is outside of that realm that you're really into? Kind of maybe you nerd out on or geek out on. Something that's surprising that I wouldn't pick up.
So my one thing is, I love music, and I'm pretty diverse.
You got me into. who I love now. Oh my gosh, I can't even think. They just came out with well, not just came out. It came out like the Human song.
Oh yeah, Highly Suspect.
Highly Suspect. Oh
Sure.
man, that's like one of my favorite bands. Yeah.
So, but I love live music. So I'm really into concerts, and I go to a ton of concerts over the course of a year.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I'll see a ton of concerts. This summer I'm going to probably 15 different concerts, maybe even more.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to Denver to Red Rocks to see a couple of shows at their amphitheater.
Wow.
But my big guilty pleasures are 90s music,
Mm-hmm.
and my two big bands that I really like are Third Eye Blind and the Goo Goo Dolls, which is like the weirdest thing.
Oh my gosh.
But I used to see the Goo Goo Dolls for free because they're from Buffalo. I would see them playing at local bars in the 80s when I was in college.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I'll go and spend the extra money for the really good seats
Mm-hmm.
to see a band play. I've probably seen Third Eye Blind 30 or 40 times. I think one year I saw them like 5 or 6 times. I'm seeing them my birthday weekend. I'm going to 2 concerts my birthday weekend.
I would have never guessed this.
Bands I'm going to see. But yeah, I'll pay the money and go see sit close up for a band.
Yeah.
And my goal this year is to do, for my 50th, is to do 50 shows of some sort. So I've got about 15 or 18 concerts currly planned and tickets, and
that's awesome.
And
wow.
yeah,
I would have never guessed
it's
this.
the one thing I absolutely love, going to live concerts, venues, go even if it's a small place, seeing a band play in a small place or something like that. I love it. I'll spend the money to do it. It's the one thing I'll spend money on, is to go and see a band I like, or an up and coming band. But I'll go to a concert, and I'll go the minute the doors open. I'll sit for every single band that plays, no matter how bad the first opening band is. I'll sit until the last encore, the entire show. I'll go and see. There's something about going to a concert and seeing a live band play. I've seen Highly Suspect.
Oh, you have? Oh man, I would have liked to go into that.
I've seen them 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I'm not big into
for their 2 albums
live thing. I've gone to it was back in college, the Foo Fighters and the oh my gosh, Weezer.
Yeah,
I was a big Weezer fan in college, but that kind of.
So I've seen the Foo Fighters a bunch of times as well.
So what is okay? So if I had to say your top 3 favorites of all time, and then your top 3 that are up and coming.
So my favorite band of all time that I grew up listening to was Van Halen. I've seen Van Halen probably more than any other band. I've seen them with David Lee Roth. I saw David Lee Roth when he left himself. I saw him with Sammy Hagar. I've seen them when they came around again. I saw them probably half a dozen times. Wow. I saw them in New York and New Jersey. I saw them in Philly. So they're probably my number one band that I would go see a million times. And then Third Eye Blind and probably the Goo Goo Dolls are probably those are my top 3. Up and coming, so Highly Suspect.
Yeah, which
phenomenal.
I really
They have 2
really
records.
like.
They have 2 records out. They're a phenomenal band. They play a great show. They give you a 2-hour concert.
They're like my lifting music.
Yeah, they're a great band to see. Another one that's out there who I haven't seen, but I'm trying to get to see, is there's a guy named Missio. Missio. He's phenomenal. He's on Spotify now.
Okay.
But you can play him on Spotify.
I'll check that out.
A lot of his music he also does is like acoustic type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's really good. It's good workout music to listen to.
Yeah, I'm always looking for that.
I'm trying to think. I don't really know I don't really have like a third up and coming. But just from a diversity perspective, I really like bluesy rocks. There's a guy named Joe Bonamassa who's on Spotify a lot. He's a little bit in that Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of genre. He's a phenomenal guy too. Plays a lot of guitar. It's guitar kind of bluesy rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, anything outside of classical and opera, I don't really dig those genres. I'm actually starting to listen a little bit more to like modern country.
Oh, really? My brother, he lived in Texas for a long time.
It's good music.
He loves country
I actually
music.
started listening to it. I went to Nashville for work about a year and a half ago. I had to go for a few days.
Yeah, something about being in a town that they love country music. You just pick it up.
Yeah, you really have developed a real appreciation for that. It's a genre I never really listened to up until recently, but I'm starting to listen to a little bit more of that because it's really not that twangy stuff that I think I'm associated with. But yeah, there's so much music out there, and it's just a matter of just finding what different guys are listening to, and then saying, hey, that's not that bad, and listening to. But yeah, I'll go. if I could, I'd go to a concert every night. I've got this summer. I've got a bunch of stuff where I'm doing 2-3 nights in a row of concerts.
That's awesome. I would have never guessed. Yeah,
it's my favorite. It really is my favorite thing to do. My birthday weekend is concerts and jiu-jitsu. That's it. Like that's really. I got a concert on June 8th. I'm gonna do train in the morning. Got a concert that night. Gonna train Saturday. Got a concert Saturday night. And then gonna train on Sunday. That's my whole. That's it.
That's awesome.
I'm really
you
excited.
should throw the range in there. I'll go.
Yeah, I might. Sunday afternoon. There might be a range on Sunday afternoon. That might be the finale. Yeah. It's gonna be good. That's
All right, great, man. Well, thank you so much for doing the episode. It was a lot of food for thought to just think about, and I really appreciate your introspection.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it, man.
Yeah. So, I'll see you on the mats.
Thanks for having me, Simon. See you on the mats.
Yep. All right. All done.
That was fun.
Yeah, see? What's up, everyone? Thanks so much for watching the episode. If you liked what you saw, make sure to subscribe, comment, like, and definitely share, because you never know who this could help. If you'd like to buy any of the products that were discussed, the links are all available in the description below under the video. Make sure to use my links so that I can get paid. And if you'd like to further support what I'm doing, you can send me Bitcoin and Litecoin to my wallet addresses that are also in the description. Thank you all again so much for watching and your support for the project. Peace!